Part 43. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishida De. Chapter 422. Everyone prepare for battle. In the 7th Fleet, Lian Wenqing issued combat orders without hesitation. No matter what, the Zerg are the common enemy of mankind, and there is no possibility of unity. Because this race cannot communicate and exchange at all. In the eyes of the Zerg, the first rule is survival, the second rule is evolution. And the third rule is eating. They will collect all the biomass they can collect, and their huge stomachs will never be satisfied. Eat. 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 On the premise of ensuring survival and evolution, the Zerg will eat everything they see. But that's just an ordinary Zerg. Looking at the huge irregular-shaped Zerg nest in front of him, Lian Wenqing's heart fell to the bottom little by little. The Zerg has never had such a terrifying unit. So it's not difficult for him to guess that this should be the final strategy of the Zerg. And the Thor, which is the counterpart of humans, is now in another corner of the galaxy, attacking an inconspicuous breeding planet of the Zerg. How should they fight this battle? At this time, in the 7th Fleet, two big words suddenly floated out from the temporary command ship where Lian Wenqing was. Retreat. Before Lian Wenqing could think about the meaning of these two words, he saw that the giant fleet sailing out of the ideal city had already taken a step ahead. Their range was far beyond Lian Wenqing's imagination. Although it was still so far away, the firepower network of that fleet had already greeted the Zerg. Even as a point defense weapon, the close-in defense gun could actually hit the depths of the Zerg and tear a bloody wound on the biological warship. But is this enough? Lian Wenqing didn't dare to say it was enough. The most terrifying thing about the Zerg is that they are huge in number and fearless. If the final strategy was present, the number of this Zerg fleet should not be less than hundreds of thousands, and it might even be a main force of the Zerg. Even if Gao Qiang's combat power is unparalleled and can quickly destroy thousands of biological warships, it will only be wiped out by the Zerg that continues to fall. Besides, Lian Wenqing looked in the direction of the Wasp Mother. The strange existence that seemed to be the final strategy of the Zerg had not yet made a move. What you think is what you get. Just when the Zerg was suppressed by the artillery fire and could not move forward, the cold voice echoed in the space again. Children, destroy, collect. As if receiving some instructions. Countless individuals drilled out of the Wasp Mother's body, forming a cloud of death around the Wasp Mother. And Gao Qiang, who was sitting in the highest command center, saw it clearly. The cloud of death composed of life is not only powerful in attack, but also a living meat shield for the Wasp Mother. All the firepower hitting the Wasp Mother was intercepted by them. They defended the safety of the Wasp Mother with their own lives. It is worth appreciating, but not worth promoting, Wei Yan commented. Because in the next moment, the slow-moving master came to the front of all the starships of Gao Qiang's side. When the Overlord appeared, an inexplicable electronic wave spread out in all directions. Immediately, the firing speed of all the starships covered by the Overlord increased by more than double. Overlord silent. Introduction: the strongest firepower, the strongest armor, the ability to self-repair, and the combat power that surpasses an entire fleet. It will come with an emperor-like posture, and it will never change the direction of the battle, because it represents the advantage itself. Toughness: 180,000 add 100,000, plated armor, add 30,000, loop technology. Features: safe overclocking, target acquisition, noise, quantum destabilizer, subspace trap. Safe overclocking: within the range of the Overlord, the firing speed of all friendly starships is increased by 100%, and the navigation speed is increased by 30%. Target acquisition: within the range of the Overlord, the accuracy of all friendly starships is increased by 100%. Noise: release redundant signals and junk pheromones. Within the range of the Overlord, All enemy transponders fail, and biological warships lose the ability to distinguish between friend and foe. Quantum destabilizer: within the range of the Overlord, unstable space force fields will directly reduce the speed of enemy ships by 20%. Subspace trap: within the range of the Overlord, the space turbulence that appears from time to time will sweep our enemies to unknown corners. After finally reading the long string of information from the Overlord, Gao Qiang suppressed his excitement, trembling hands, and calmly raised the cup to take a sip. Well, the advantage is mine. As the Overlord intervened in the battlefield, the death cloud formed by the swarm of insects had become a mess. Although they were numerous, they could no longer quickly identify orders and friendly forces through pheromones under the interference of the Overlord. Now, just to identify the enemy and friend, it would take them several times, or even dozens of times, more time, not to mention accepting the orders of the insect mother. At this time, the Overmind's main gun suddenly opened fire, piercing through the death cloud and bombarding the Wasp Queen's body. The outer layer of twisting flesh was directly burned into charcoal by the high-energy beam, revealing the dark and reflective bone-like tissue underneath. Obviously, this is another final strategy of the Zerg: biomass reshaping. The reshaped biomass expands the iron element in the body, which only accounts for 0.006%, to more than 60%. Combined with a large number of rare elements, they are directly converted into alloys in the body, completely abandoning the weakness and fragility of life forms and embracing a more advanced evolution. Compared with intelligent machines, the swarm after reshaping biomass can still be counted as carbon-based life. But in fact, they have ascended to another realm. With a body harder than the outer armor of a starship, the offspring created by the Wasp Queen can even easily eat the starship. This is also the main reason why the 3rd Fleet and the 15th Fleet of the Bioconsortium could not resist at all and disappeared directly. It's a pity that they chose the wrong opponent this time. In Gao Qiang's eyes, Wei Yan's interface of the people changed again. Among the previously blocked entries, a new entry was unlocked. Age of Awakening. Introduction: war is inevitable, but when we begin to hate war, the war must end. Effect: when our war weariness is greater than 10%, for every 10% increase, our overall combat effectiveness increases by 10%. The troops led by this unit will not reduce their combat effectiveness due to injuries. At this time, Wei Yan looked at the picture of the Wasp Queen on the screen. Very strong, but not strong enough compared to the wars I've experienced before. If this is all their strength, it's a bit disappointing. Okay, Wei Yan. Grandma Zuzu interrupted Wei Yan. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 423. With Jologo's help, Grandma Zuzu walked to Wei Yan with a cane. You can't always demand others based on the war you have experienced, Wei Yan. What you are facing now is just a new civilization that has developed for 100 years. Yes, Wei Yan nodded and sighed, only 100 years. The 100 years consumed by the development of the Zerg seems very long, but on the scale of the universe, it is not enough. Not to mention the 10,000 years of stagnation in the wall of size. Even millions of years ago, there were still traces of ancient civilizations such as the pioneers. Even if the Zerg can evolve again, it has only developed for 100 years. And a mere 100 years. How can it surpass everything left by their ancestors' struggle 10,000 years ago? I am obsessed, Wei Yan nodded. Then he coldly entered the command from the console and turned on the power of all the facilities of the master to the maximum. Since it is impossible to be evenly matched, then rapid destruction is the greatest mercy he can give to the enemy. As the power of the Overmind reached full, the Zerg finally fell into complete chaos. Due to the need for space travel, most biological warships no longer rely on backward organs such as vision. But this also directly led to the fact that once the pheromones were completely disordered, they would be like losing their eyes, no different from the deaf and blind of humans. Hiss, hiss, hiss. It's not just biological warships. As the Overmind Silent continued to overclock and expand the various facilities it carried, even the shells in the Zerg biological warships were in turmoil to varying degrees. They couldn't tell whether they were being fired or whether they were inside the starship of the hostile race. In confusion, some biological shells mistakenly thought they had been fired and exploded directly inside the Zerg biological warship. At this time, the Overmind was still pouring out its own firepower network. Although the design concept was not the eternal light based on firepower. But the main gun carried by Silent was not weak either. After a round of full power charging, only one shot penetrated the biomass armor of the Wasp Queen. Blood, minced meat, wreckage. The destruction of biological warships is always bloody and terrifying. This is war. Katrina couldn't help but sigh. When the stars are far away from us, the ballads have become fairy tales that cannot be recalled. Stars, Gao Qiang asked in confusion, and then guessed, does it mean the departure of civilization and the arrival of barbarism? Maybe. Katrina didn't seem to want to talk more about this sentence. Glancing at the battlefield that was almost over. Since the Overlord intervened in the battlefield, hundreds of thousands of Zerg biological warships have never made any waves. All attacks were blocked by the Overlord, and the rest of the starships could follow the Overlord and pour out artillery fire as much as they wanted. Victory seems to be just a matter of time. You won another victory, how do you feel? Katrina asked Gao Qiang. Gao Qiang scratched his face, it's okay, haha. If you really want to describe the feeling, it's like watching it live in the cinema but without some popcorn. It's really a wonderful metaphor. Katrina held it in for a long time before she came up with a word to describe Gao Qiang's words. However, this kind of war without any art would not please Katrina. She didn't want to participate too much in this meaningless massacre. After thinking about it, Katrina looked at Gao Qiang seriously. Lord, you should still be able to choose a final strategy, right? Seeing Gao Qiang nodded, Katrina immediately suggested, I suggest you choose geocentrism, you won't be disappointed with it. According to Katrina's description, Gao Qiang opened the final strategy interface that had not yet been selected. From the countless messy final strategies, he found what Katrina described. Title device geocentrism. Introduction. In the past, we had no choice but to confirm the existence of heliocentrism because of our broadened horizons. Now, our horizons are more open, our technology is more advanced, and we finally have the power to set the geocentric theory right. Effect. After choosing this final strategy, we will start the construction plan of the title device for a week. Title device. Effect. Ebb and flow. By simulating the tides of the sea, we will have the power to control the orbits of planets. Let us throw those planets that do not meet our wishes out of our world. From now on, we are the center of the world, and everything will revolve around us. They may not understand, but they must obey. What do you think, Lord? Facing Katarina's expectant eyes, Gao Qiang nodded, okay. It only took about a week. Due to the characteristics of the awakening empire, the construction of the title device did not consume any resources of Gao Qiang. And in a week, the main force of the Zerg that came with the Wasp Queen was also consumed. The title device geocentric theory was actually built without any waves. At the same time as the geocentric theory was established, a new projection panel was connected to the control room of the highest command center where Gao Qiang was located. Like the star map panel, this new panel contains the orbits of all planets in the entire galaxy. But it is different from the star map panel. This new panel lacks the ability to monitor enemies in real time and has the ability to drag planets. It seems magical. Gao Qiang looked at the star map in front of him and pointed his finger at an inconspicuous planet. With just a slight touch, the planet flew far away and completely changed its orbit. At this time, following Gao Qiang's movements, the tidal device violently erupted with a gravitational wave, hitting the planet that Gao-Chiang had moved. Under the influence of gravitational waves, the planet changed its orbit just like in the star map. In the end, it collided with the burning star and was completely swallowed up, without causing any waves. After seeing the tragedy of that planet, Gao-Chiang rubbed his chin and seemed to have an idea. After picking out most of the planets eroded by the Zerg, Gao-Chiang held those planets between his fingers and threw them one by one into the stars in the galaxy. These dirty planets are obviously no longer available. After devouring a large number of planets, those stars began to bulge and seemed likely to explode at any time. Seeing this, Gao-Chiang directly pushed forward, changing the trajectory of several stars, and directly threw them out of the galaxy. Soon, the originally huge 1,000-star system was reduced to the last star by Gao-Chiang. And this star was dragged by Gao-Chiang to the side of Ideal City and rotated around Ideal City. Perhaps, this is the effect that the geocentric theory originally wanted to achieve. With this in mind, Gao-Chiang set his sights on a Zerg planet in the star map that was surrounded by the White Feather Consortium fleet and had not yet been thrown into the star. According to the star map, there seems to be a miracle inside this planet. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 424. At this moment, the Zerg 11 breeding planet was completely covered by the fleet of the Bio group. With the help of the powerful unlimited firepower of the Thor, the Bio group almost came here with great momentum. But unexpectedly, Song Dijun did not order the fleets to carry out orbital bombing. Instead, he ordered people to guard the planetary orbit, and he took the Thor to activate the land cruise mode and landed on the surface of the planet. In the communication channel, the commanders of several fleets gathered together. One of them asked first, "What do you think the big supervisor is thinking about?" The others shook their heads with blank eyes. If we can guess the big supervisor's mind, we will all become big supervisors. Obviously, everyone was puzzled by the strange instructions issued by Song Dijun. At this time, Song Dijun, who was muttering on the surface, sneezed. Wiping his runny nose, Song Dijun continued to put on an indifferent attitude and commanded the Marines on the front line to attack the Zerg mother nest. In fact, it was not that he did not want to carry out orbital bombing. But he was stopped by the voice in his mind just before the orbital bombing was carried out. Only then did he realize that the miracle of goat eggs was very special. Although it was not physically or energy immune, the miracle attribute it carried made it impossible to be destroyed by ordinary attacks. If the orbital bombing was carried out rashly, even if all the swarms on the surface of the planet were plowed flat by unlimited firepower, the goat eggs might not be destroyed. It is even possible that the goat eggs would be blown to some unknown corner, or blown into a special form, so that they could not be quickly destroyed. If you want to destroy the goat eggs, getting them first is definitely the best choice. If I help you destroy that miracle, you can help me deal with the Zerg, right? Song Dijun asked the voice in his mind. Well, yes, that's right. The voice perfunctorily told him, but Song Dijun keenly felt that the voice began to carry a hint of anxiety again. What happened? Song Dijun couldn't help asking. Time. The voice in his mind slowly replied, "We are really running out of time this time. Some guys are weaker than I expected, and they didn't buy us much time at all. Are you worried about not having enough time again?" Although I don't know what the voice in my mind is afraid of. But Song Dijun still answered with ease, "Don't worry, we definitely have enough time." Pointing to the picture projected on the screen of the Thor. Under the continuous attack of the Marines, even if they were facing the Zerg wave of the entire planet, they were still pushed out of a passage to the inside. Under normal circumstances, the breeding queen of the Zerg is very slow, or even unable to move. Therefore, Song Di-jun is confident that at most tomorrow noon, that is, in 1.5 days, he will be able to get the goat eggs mentioned by the voice in his mind. At this moment, the detection radar of the Thor did not detect any external signals, that is, there was no outsider except the Zerg and the consortium within the detection range. Even if it is just sailing in the galaxy, it takes time. It is impossible to sail over and break through the defense line of the consortium in 1.5 days. So no matter what the voice in the mind is afraid of, they definitely have enough time. I hope so. The voice in the mind responded, but was not inspired by Song Di-jun's affirmative words. Because he has seen a corner of the future. At this moment, in the orbit of the breeding mother planet number 11, the guarding consortium fleet suddenly noticed that the radar signal was different. Do you feel that the number of planets in the galaxy seems to be a little less? A commander suddenly asked in confusion. Following his words, the other commanders hurriedly looked at the stars detected in the radar and counted them. 1, 2, 3, 97. Counting to 97, several commanders who were counting suddenly stopped. It's not that they don't want to continue counting. But, in the radar display, there are only 97 planets left. As the number of planets decreases, the size of the entire 1,000-star system has also decreased by more than 10 times. No. Where did the other planets go? Were the remaining 900 or so planets eaten by a planet devourer that came out of an unknown corner? What's even more outrageous is that through the transponder signal, several commanders found that most of the remaining planets belonged to humans, a few were barren planets, and only a very small number were Zerg planets. The huge Zerg swarm that originally occupied more than 80% of the planets in the entire galaxy seemed to disappear along with their planets in the blink of an eye. If it was really done by a certain existence. Hey, the devourer of planets is quite picky about food, and humans don't like to eat it. It's really a cause for celebration, Coca-Cola. The happy mood did not last long among the commanders. The commander with keen senses who spoke first once again destroyed the harmony on the field. By the way, do you feel that we are being pulled by the gravity of the planet? Stop. Immediately, the other commanders in the communication channel looked at him with vigilant eyes. Can you shut your stinky mouth, you crow mouth? Yes, yes, isn't it strange that we are parked in the orbit of a planet and move with the planet? So that's how it is. The commander who asked the question nodded in sudden realization. Then he blinked and tilted his head. So is it normal that we are surrounded? As soon as he finished speaking, a shrill red alarm sounded in several fleets of the consortium at the same time. Just because a behemoth that exceeded the size of an entire fleet had approached the fleets. And around the behemoth, there were fleets that kept sailing out, vaguely intending to surround all the fleets belonging to the Bio consortium. At this time, the other commanders were not calm. What's going on? Hum your crow mouth. Thank God, I should have sewed up all the holes in your body long ago. Thinking that I will have to match you in the future, I wish I could kill myself with a piece of tofu. Although he was merciless, the commanders were all experienced people, and naturally they would not be indifferent to the arrival of accidents. They quickly issued orders, ordering several fleets to enter combat readiness. But what they didn't expect was a bigger surprise came. Commander, we have lost communication with other starships. Commander, the communication channel has been blocked, and our communication means have completely failed. Commander, a strong interference signal has been detected, and our locking device cannot be activated normally. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 425. Commander. The bridges of each flagship were as if they had been blown up. One piece of bad news was poured into the ears of several commanders as if for free. The enemy tracking device failed, the transponder failed, the radar module failed, and almost all external equipment failed. The electronic warfare teams carried by each fleet did not try to fight back. But when they fought back, they discovered that they were not on the same level as their opponent. All electronic warfare teams that tried to fight back were instantly wiped out. For this reason, various fleets even lost many expensive electronic countermeasures computers. And now, they don't even know who the other party is, nor their purpose of coming, nor have they entered into a formal battle with the other party. If we only talk about electronic warfare, they have completely lost in a mess. Damn it, what the hell is on the other side? A commander quickly left the bridge and walked to the corridor with panoramic glass, looking anxiously at the outside world. The figure that dominates the sky and the earth comes into view. Even the largest space station he had seen built by the Bio Consortium so far did not have the size of a master. But unlike the space station, the Overlord can move. At this moment, within the Dominion, all the personnel who were originally at the High Command have been transferred here. But in fact, none of the starships, including the Overlord, had moved. Just as Song Di-jun originally thought. In a day and a half, it was impossible for Gao Qiang to move above the Zerg breeding star number 11, break through the blockade of the Consortium fleet, and finally get the miracle in the hands of the Zerg first. Everything during this period takes more or less time. So in order to save time, Gao Qiang simply used geocentric theory to drag the planet carrying the miracle in front of him. Let the planets come to you. Wouldn't this save time? As for the fleets of the Consortium in front of us, Gao Qiang narrowed his eyes. In his eyes, these fleets were far inferior to the previous main force of the Zerg. Just the interference signal passively released by the Master has turned these fleets into headless flies. It's not difficult to deal with them. At this time, Feng Zhou suddenly scratched the back of his head and smiled awkwardly. Why don't you let me try to persuade these people across from you? It doesn't cost anything to try anyway, right? Oh. Gao Qiang looked at Feng Zhou with some surprise, and asked in surprise, when did you still have this ability? Hey, I've always been okay. Feng Zhou looked down upon, if it weren't for the sake of saving some face for the man named Song, believe it or not, I could have ousted half of him with just one sentence. However, Gao Qiang still looked unbelieving. Seeing that Feng Zhou still wanted to quibble, Gao Qiang simply turned his head to the side and shouted, 401. I am here. The projection of 401's smiling face appeared next to Gao Qiang. Gao Qiang clicked Feng Zhou, and 401's powerful computing power instantly understood what Gao Qiang meant. The smiling face moved closer to Feng Zhou, and the electronic sound of 401 soon sounded. Your micro-expression management is not in place, your sweat gland secretion is abnormal, and your heartbeat and blood flow rate are significantly accelerated. According to my professional analysis, you are lying now. No, can we still have a good chat? Feng Zhou helplessly raised his hands and surrendered. He admitted that he did not show his threat before, more because he was worried about the huge threat Song Di-jun would pose to his life safety, rather than taking into account Song Di-jun's face. But now that the lie has been exposed by an AI, he himself should save face. If the inside plan was still there, it would be impossible to treat him like this. However, at this time, the inside plan that should have stayed in the ideal city suddenly appeared in the Master. The sound of 401 also appeared at the same time. I connected to a foreign AI from Pioneer Technology. It should play some positive role in my argument. Looking at the inside plan that really appeared in front of him, Feng Zhou's expression twitched slightly. Is this guy trying to expose his shortcomings? However, Feng Zhou's guess was indeed correct. In front of everyone, Inside Project pulled out Feng Zhou's Xiaojuju without hesitation. Why are you lying, Commander? Based on our long and happy cooperation, you have not shown the courage to stand up to your boss. He's lying, he's slandering me. Feng Zhou pointed to the Inside Project, as if he couldn't believe that his own AI wasn't on his side. Suddenly, Feng Zhou seemed to have thought of something, so he blurted out, and he is obviously an artificial retard, and he can't talk or do anything. The Inside Project is an extremely advanced intelligent system, you can't slander me like that. Seeing that the Inside Project was still resisting, Feng Zhou immediately asked, "Tell me, how should we deal with Song Dijun now?" Then, under Feng Zhou's nervous gaze, the Inside Project once again gave the same answer as before. "You can summon the 1st to 9th fleets of the highest intelligence." "Look what I said." Feng Zhou shrugged, stretched out his hands towards the Inside Project, and gave an innocent look. "I said he was an artificial retard, right?" At this time, a voice came from the side. "Well, you have wasted 5 minutes. Sasha raised her hand weakly and said, "Sasha wants to eat snacks." "Did anyone bring snacks?" Obviously, as an omnipotent, powerful, and invincible master, the design of this battleship made a fatal mistake. It does not carry a delicious snack production line. Sasha innocently shook the bag of snacks in her hand. "There is nothing left." After being interrupted by Sasha, Gao Qiang also came back to his senses and stopped holding Feng Zhou. But he waved his hand directly to Feng Zhou. "If you want to try, go ahead and try." Although he did not have any expectations for Feng Zhou's influence. "Let me make it clear first, if your people do not surrender after the test, I will open fire here." Yeah, Feng Zhou nodded like pounding garlic. Then he stepped forward and put his face in the center of the big screen. At this time, the communication channels of several flagship fleets of the Baiyu Group were hijacked by the Overlord and the communication was forcibly connected. Feng Zhou's face appeared in front of several commanders. "It's you." Because Feng Zhou's airborne name was too famous, many high-level officials of the Baiyu Group knew about it. In the past, they would have sneered at people like Feng Zhou who were airborne. But now that Feng Zhou's face appeared in the hijacked communication channel, it was very different. "Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire?" Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 426. Ahem. Feng Zhou coughed twice, looked at the big screen and stared at several fleet commanders. "You all know me, and I know you, so I won't say more polite words. As you can see, I am a prisoner now, and I am here to persuade you to surrender as a prisoner." Hearing this, several commanders frowned at the same time. Prisoners have been unwelcome since ancient times, and prisoners who help the enemy to surrender are even more so. But Feng Zhou's next words made them reconsider this issue. Feng Zhou stretched out his hand and pointed at his feet. "As you can see, the vehicle I am imprisoned in now is called the Overlord." At this time, Gao Qiang saw Feng Zhou constantly winking at him. Sasha leaned close to Gao Qiang's ear and whispered, "I think he is saying, put some data to scare the other side to death." "You can even understand I language," Gao Qiang looked at Sasha with a surprised expression. He always felt strange, why some people can always see several sentences or even a short essay from other people's eyes. Now that he has seen it with his own eyes, he can only say that he has to admit it. However, Gao Qiang was surprised, but he did not delay the business. He directly called 401 and sent the specific data of the Overlord to the other side. He was not afraid that the other side would reproduce the Overlord according to the blueprint. Gao Qiang calculated in his mind. Although the Overlord was not the final strategy for him, but the resources required could not be supplied even if 10 of the final strategies chosen by Song Dijun were emptied. The amount of alloys and other resources required to build an Overlord is an unimaginable astronomical figure. This is completely a monster piled up with resources and technology. Sometimes the truth is a sharp knife that kills people. After seeing the specific parameters of the Overlord sent by Gao Qiang, the commanders of several fleets fell silent one by one. Can this thing be made by humans? If they had known that humans had lords who could make such things, they would still be shrinking. Then he immediately pulled out a 2.58 million manpower and pushed forward to the Zerg. Wait. Several commanders suddenly reacted. Don't tell them that their dear director Song, the human lord who was sent to deal with before, is the master of the overlord in front of them. Isn't this a joke? Looking at the current situation, the other party seems to have been offended to death by himself and others. But Feng Zhou continued to add a knife at this time. Now you only have two choices. One is to surrender directly and become a prisoner with me. The other choice is to kill the overlord under my feet and stand firmly on the side of old Song. You choose it yourself. Suddenly, several commanders looked at each other and pointed at themselves in disbelief. I'm going to kill the overlord, is it true? Because they had just seen the relevant parameters of the overlord, in just a moment, several commanders had a plan. After Manager Feng was captured, we couldn't sleep or eat well, fearing that Manager Feng would meet with an accident. Now that the enemy is approaching, we should fight bloody battles. But Manager Feng is still in the hands of the thieves, how can we fight with peace of mind? The words were spoken with great emotion. Even Gao Qiang was moved and couldn't help pointing at Feng Zhou, saying to several commanders, how about I let him go? However, the people on the other side of the communication channel were one step faster. We surrender. A moment later, several commanders appeared in the command room of the overlord as hostages, holding Feng Zhou's hands with tears. Oh, Manager Feng, I'm so glad you're okay. Since that day I heard the news of Manager Feng's disappearance, I have been crying day and night, and I just want to dismiss myself. Yes, yes, if something happens to you, how can we explain to the board of directors? The voices of several people were full of emotion, and it was unknown whether they were happy that Feng Zhou was alive, or that they saw the parameters of the overlord in advance, so that they could live happily. Feng Zhou looked disgusted and quietly pulled back his hand. He looked at the snot on the back of his hand that had been wiped by a certain commander. Damn, he is not clean. So you offended Song Dijun so much, aren't you afraid that he will go back alive? Gao Qiang asked curiously. Of course, it was just a question. Song Dijun bullied him too much, so he must have no chance to go back alive. And facing Gao Qiang's question, Feng Zhou sneered, what are you afraid of? I still have people above me, but he has no one above him. Gao Qiang nodded. Okay, another one who relies on his father. It seems that even in a war game, you have to pay attention to connections, power, and background to get out. If you are suppressed, you will really become a little scoundrel. But now, Feng Zhou persuaded all the fleets brought by Song Dijun to surrender, which saved Gao Qiang a lot of time. The huge master directly approached the low Earth orbit of the breeding mother planet number 11. Its terrifying size casts a layer of gloom over the ground. Well, let me see. The star map module is activated with high intensity, and the current status of the surface is enlarged. Since it is the breeding home planet of the Zerg, the entire planet is covered with flesh-colored fungal soil. The various combat units of the Zerg are spread all over the fungal soil like a tide. With this density and this scale, it is conceivable how desperate the races that once faced this group of Zerg would be. But in the blood red, the azure arc light continuously emitted by the Thor was particularly dazzling. This guy. Through the enlarged star map, Gao Qiang saw that the Thor faced the sweeping Zerg as if it was in a no-man's land. Every time the main gun was fired, it would penetrate all the Zerg units in a straight line, and no existence would be spared. And the target of this Thor? Gao Qiang glanced at another corner of the star map. The opponent's target seemed to be a miracle. However, the star map showed that the miracle owned by the Zerg was moving slowly in the nest. But with the speed of this miracle, it would not be long before it would be caught up by the relentless Thor. Interesting, is the opponent also a miracle path? Gao Qiang rubbed his chin and guessed. He actually didn't know why Song Dijun was looking for miracles, and of course, he didn't care. Since we have the same goal, I'll help him. Looking at the Thor still wreaking havoc in the Zerg on the star map, Gao Qiang immediately issued an attack order. The Overlord instantly adjusted his position and turned his front to face the ground. Then countless beams of light tilted down, covering the Thor like a pillar to the sky. Just kidding, Gao Qiang didn't say whether to help the Thor or the Zerg. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 427. Faced with the sudden attack of the Overlord, the Thor was caught off guard in an instant. The energy shield that was barely activated only lasted for a few seconds before it melted due to overheating. Then the outer armor was not spared. After the light beams that fell like raindrops disappeared, most areas of the Thor were completely paralyzed, and even the severely melted keel was exposed. Alarm, alarm. In the remaining areas of the Thor, the alarms never stopped. What happened? Song Di-jun showed a distorted face and lay on the console in disbelief. At this moment, most of the cabins on the control panel of the Thor were in a red offline state. Not because of anything else, just because those cabins had been completely destroyed. Song Di-jun didn't understand. Why did the originally good situation disappear in just an instant? With the power module and firepower module offline, the raging Thor directly became a living target for anyone to slaughter. If the attack from the sky had not cleared the surrounding insect swarms, Song Di-jun could even imagine the scene of the insect swarm rushing into the bridge and gnawing at his internal organs. But now there is a problem. That is, facing this sudden attack, where did the voice in his mind go? I need an explanation, Song Di-jun asked with gritted teeth. In the previous war, thanks to the help of the voice in his mind, the Thor has always been in its prime. The damaged outer armor will return to the state before it was damaged, and the consumed energy will also be infinitely traced back to the full period. But just when the attack fell, the voice in his mind did not help him again. Instead, he watched helplessly as the Thor was mostly destroyed under the countless firepower above the orbit. Why? Without getting a response from the voice in his head, Song Di-jun continued to ask in a stern voice, you should know that if you continue to help me, we will soon achieve your goal. Destroying the miracle of the Zerg is not a difficult task at all, as long as you are willing to help us. Finally, under Song Di-jun's stern questioning, the voice in his head responded. But this time, he gave Song Di-jun an unacceptable reason. I can't do it. What did you say? Song Di-jun's expression froze in place. It was the first time he heard the word can't do it from the voice in his head. I can't do it. The voice in his head repeated it again. It's over, you messed up what I asked you to do again. In the dark void, a peeping gaze was staring at the Thor. But he could do nothing. What Song Di-jun didn't know was that the Thor could remain in its prime indefinitely because the paradox manipulated the time of the Thor. In the past, the Thor fell into the paradox countless times. Whether to fire the main gun, whether to be attacked, whether the line is damaged. Under the manipulation of paradox, the answers to these questions are very clear. No, no, and yes or no. After firing the main gun, it falls into a paradox, denying the time to fire the main gun. This is why paradox can give Thor unlimited firepower. He even turned Thor into a special vehicle with its own timeline. And all this shattered like bubbles with the arrival of Gao Qiang. Gao Qiang's 5th level miracle talent, What If. This ability prevents Gao Qiang's timeline from having what if. Therefore, when Gao Qiang ordered an attack on Thor, the time paradox that denied Thor from being damaged would no longer exist. At this point, even if paradox himself came down, it could not change the fact that Thor had been completely paralyzed. We have no time. After saying the last sentence, Song Di-jun found that the voice in his mind had completely left, and no matter how he called, it did not appear again. Obviously, he had been abandoned. Asshole. Song Di-jun kicked the control console in front of him, his face turned cold, and he took out a gun from under the control console. Don't get me wrong, he certainly didn't want to commit suicide. At this point, Song Di-jun just wanted to make up for his mistakes. He really needed the voice in his mind. Although he could reach the position of a big supervisor, he was not weak from beginning to end. But after experiencing the real power, how could Song Di-jun be willing to return to his weakest period? As long as the goat eggs are destroyed. Muttering in his mouth, Song Di-jun put on a full set of nano armor, blasted open the locked hatch and walked out. Until now, he still thought he had time. He was very close to the location of the Zerg miracle, and the other party didn't know that orbital bombing would hardly destroy the miracle, so they might not choose to land. The time difference in between was his opportunity. At this moment, there were still many surviving Marines in the Thor. When they saw Song Di-jun, they seemed to have found the backbone, and they followed Song Di-jun spontaneously one by one. When Song Di-jun destroyed the melted outer armor and saw the light of day again, thousands of Marines were following him. Hiss. Song Di-jun had just stepped out of the corridor and walked to the top of the Thor when he heard the sound of insects coming from the outer ground. Then, the ground collapsed piece by piece, and countless hideous insects of various shapes crawled out from the ground. Obviously, the reinforcements of the Zerg have arrived. Even though the orbital bombardment just now has completely killed a group of Zerg swarms. But as the breeding home planet of the Zerg swarms here are endless. Wait. Song Di-jun turned his head suddenly and looked at a corner of this new batch of Zerg swarms. In the collapsed surface, a huge milky white giant worm hundreds of meters long was pushed out by the swarm. While moving forward, it was still spraying milky white eggs. Those eggs only need to touch the ground to break out of the pupa and become larvae. And after absorbing enough nutrients, they will even evolve into adults with terrifying combat power in a short time. But Song Di-jun didn't really pay attention to these. What he noticed was a group of strange objects surrounded by flesh and blood behind the giant worm. The object looked like some kind of organ of an animal, but there was a thin layer of wool on the outside. What was even more terrifying was that when Song Di-jun looked at it, he felt that the organ was also looking at him. It seemed to want to mate with him. Goat eggs. Song Di-jun was almost certain that the organ that looked very strange was definitely the miraculous item goat eggs mentioned by the voice in his mind. And the white giant worm in front of him was the Zerg Lord who controlled the goat eggs. I should have thought of it earlier. Song Di-jun had understood everything. The Zerg was a bloodthirsty race, and the paralysis of the Thor gave them the opportunity to engulf the Thor in one fell swoop. Therefore, the Zerg Queen no longer chose to escape, but attacked head-on, wanting to bury Song Di-jun here. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 428. After realizing this, Song Di-jun felt a little regretful. He had been too strong before. Because of the help of the voice in his mind, the Thor was rampant and fearless, which frightened the worm mother and made her dare not show up. In fact, even if Song Di-jun showed a little weakness, the worm mother would come to smell the blood, just like now. But it was okay. Song Di-jun looked at the worm mother with cold eyes. He didn't know whether the voice in his mind would come back after destroying the goat egg, but it was definitely worth a try. However, what Song Di-jun didn't know was, above the sky, Gao Qiang also saw the worm mother coming out of the ground and the goat egg wrapped around her. Miracle. In the star map, the twisted meatball with wool was exactly the miracle Gao Qiang wanted to find. It's really easy to get it, Gao Qiang muttered. Then he ordered someone to bring the supplementary regulations written by the Insight Plan. Then, Gao Qiang looked at Weiyan's position. Send us down. It's time to settle accounts with Paradox. Then, I wish you all good martial arts. Wien smiled and activated the tractor beam inside the Overmind, sending Gao Qiang and others in the control room to the bottom of the hull. As for himself, as a qualified commander, Wien usually does not go to the front line in person. Land battles are not his style. At this moment, the war has already broken out on the ground. Led by Song Dijun, thousands of Marines pierced into the Zerg swarm like a sword. This group of Zerg is obviously the new life of the Zerg mother. Although the number is still huge, Song Dijun instantly noticed the clues when he fought with them. Too weak. The bone density of these Zerg is too low, and most individuals cannot even resist the close combat attacks of the Marines. You know, the Zerg units that intercepted the Thor before couldn't even deal with smaller caliber firearms. Not to mention the slashing, which can only leave a light white mark on the exoskeletons of those Zergs. As for now, a cold light flashed beside Song Dijun, and a Marine had already split the insect in half with the saw blade attached to his gun. This is really great. A cold light flashed in Song Dijun's eyes. Because the quality of this batch of new insect swarms is really too low. Although Marines were constantly dragged away and torn into pieces along the way. But in the end, it didn't take much time for Song Dijun to rush to the insect mother. He understood that the insect mother dared to appear in front of him because she had some kind of confidence, and there might even be a trap hidden in the dark. But now that things have come to this, no matter what he will face next, Song Dijun knows that he must crush them. However, a harsh voice came from the side. Hey, is Lao Song working? Fenzhou. Song Dijun was startled and looked at the source of the sound. He saw Fenzhou following a group of strangers and greeting him happily. You're not dead yet. Hey, we're all colleagues after all, it's too much for old Song to say that. Fenzhou looked like he was heartbroken. In the past, he would have quarreled with Song Dijun, but he would never do it so obviously. But now it's different. When leaving the Overlord, Fenzhou made a final confirmation with the Inside Project. According to the judgment of the Inside Project, for now, Song Dijun's threat to his life has been reduced to 0%. For some reason, his survival rate has soared to 90%. This man, knowing that he can live, is confidence. At this moment, Fenzhou looked at Song Dijun, the old boss who always disliked him in the past, and he had an inexplicable confidence. What kind of person is this? Thinking of this, Fenzhou was pulled away by a big hand. Make way, you're blocking the way. Dake walked out of the crowd and looked at the goat eggs on the back of the insect mother. Lord, is that the broken thing you want? Scratching the back of his head, Dakai did not see anything special about the broken meat. Even if there is some hair, the amount of hair is not much, and it is difficult to use it to make a handguard for the facilities on the ship. But it is Gao Qiang's request anyway. Dake straightened his back and was about to walk towards the direction of the insect mother. ZZ. Several beams of light hit Dakai's feet. Song Dijun's cold voice soon came from the side. That thing is mine. It has come to this point, he will never watch Gao Qiang take away the goat eggs. As Song Dijun's voice fell, countless Marines loyal to him pointed their guns at Dakai. Originally, they still had the task of resisting the Zerg in the rear. But now, facing the arrival of Gao Qiang and others, Song Dijun suddenly changed his mind. Let the Zerg swarm pour here, and then in the sea of Zerg, he wants to see who will get the goat eggs. As the Marines turned their guns, countless suppressed Zerg swarmed in. Hey, old Song, you're going too far. Fenzhou shouted as he moved closer to where there were many people. Would his 10 points of survival rate be lost here? However, looking at the Zerg swarm that was coming like a tide, Gao Qiang suddenly spoke. Forget it, Uncle Dakai. He likes that thing so much, let him take it. Let's be courteous. Dake stopped when he heard this, but Song Dijun did not relax his vigilance. He led his men to the feet of the insect mother, and stared at Gao Qiang's actions with sharp eyes. He was relieved after confirming that Gao Qiang really had no intention of taking action. Although he didn't know what Gao Qiang's intention was. But as long as he took away the miracle of the Zerg, he would have absolute confidence to take back the dominant power. As the head of the Bioconsortium, he has not been in vain for so many years. He ordered people to stop the Zerg from coming back for help, then cut off the limbs of the insect mother, and finally ordered hundreds of Marines to shoot the fat of the insect mother with guns. Seeing the insect mother finally lying down, Song Dijun dared to lead people to climb onto the body of the insect mother. Walking on the fleshy fat. The goat eggs mentioned by the voice in his mind were clearly in front of him. But why did Song Dijun feel that something was wrong? Why was it so smooth? Where were the elite guards of the insect mother as expected? Was he overthinking, or was there something wrong? Just when Song Dijun was upset, a bloody smell rushed into Song Dijun's nose. Then, Song Dijun fell down, and the whole person was thrown high by a fleshy tongue. I flew so high. Song Dijun thought subconsciously. But immediately, the expression on his face changed to horror. Because as his body flew up, he saw a huge mouth waiting for him below. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shi De. Chapter 429. That mouth is hundreds of meters long. After proportional conversion, Song Dijun and the Marines brought by Song Dijun are not even as big as popcorn for this big mouth. Ah! As the big mouth stretched out its sharp teeth, it opened and closed several times, and a shrill scream soon sounded in the mouth. Blood immediately spurted out of the mouth. Then, under the gaze of everyone, the mouth of the insect mother opened wider and wider, and the organs in her body surged out, eventually forming a hideous giant monster. Hello, delicious food. Blood dripped down the monster's sharp teeth. As if realizing something, the insect mother stretched out her tongue that was tens of meters long and sucked the minced meat and blood back through the gap between her teeth. So this is the real body of the insect mother. It's not that she didn't set up guards for herself, but that she didn't need guards at all. The original fleshy, harmless appearance that needed to be lifted by the insect swarm to move was completely a disguise formed by the insect mother spontaneously. In the predator's law, camouflage is a very good thing. Qualified camouflage can make the prey send itself into the predator's mouth. As for Song Dijun, whose body was not left, the worm mother obviously did it. But this is not enough. I'm so hungry. The worm mother looked at all the humans present with hundreds of greedy compound eyes. She had just listened quietly to the infighting of humans, and her stomach had been hungry for a long time. Although it was a pity that these humans did not kill each other. But it didn't matter. No one, thinks, to leave. After saying this word by word, the worm mother took action instantly. The Marines closest to the worm mother had not had time to escape, and were pierced by the sharp blades turned out by the worm mother like candied haws and stuffed into her big mouth. However, with the size of these Marines, at most the worm mother could only taste them. As for filling the stomach, it was far from enough. Still hungry, still hungry. They are all a bunch of unnutritious guys, I want to eat more. Hundreds of compound eyes quickly locked onto more Marines. The worm mother immediately entered the hunting moment. The bigger the Marines looked, the more likely they were to be hunted by the worm mother. And it was obvious that as a lord of the Zerg, the unknown worm mother in front of her had a high probability of having a lord path of level 6 or even higher. At the same time, after decades of evolution, this worm mother was no longer an existence that ordinary Marines could deal with. Guns and cannons hit her body and bounced off quickly, and beam weapons could hardly cause substantial damage. The Marines saw that the small caliber weapons in their hands could not deal with the worm mother, and saw the terrifying figure of the worm mother rushing towards them, and their morale instantly fell to the bottom. Hurry, run. Finally, the first marine's morale collapsed, and he threw down his weapons and fled to the back, but was soon pounced on by the swarm of insects and torn into pieces. But even so, the remaining marines did not have the courage to face the sharp edge of the insect mother, and turned around and fled. Song Di-jun was dead. For them, this was a war that was bound to be lost. Soon, there were only the wailing of the marines and the chewing of the insect swarm on the field. Let me tell you, courtesy is a good virtue, and people with bad virtues will get into trouble. Facing Song Di-jun, who died because of losing his virtue, Gao Qiang shook his head with some regret. This stranger who had always wanted his life actually died because of bad virtues in the end. It was really sad and lamentable. However, at this moment, a strange voice came from Gao Qiang's ears. Turning his head, he saw Sasha holding her stomach, and the cry came from Sasha's stomach. Gurgle. Sasha is hungry too. So watching the insects swarm eat people will also make you hungry? Sasha's appetite is so good that Gao Qiang doesn't know what to say. But at this moment, seeing that no one responded to her, Sasha looked over with her big watery eyes. Stare. Lord, Sister Chef. Stare. That look is glowing. Unable to bear Sasha's hungry eyes, Gao Qiang coughed twice. Look at that Juluo. But he never thought that Juluo was also in high spirits. Don't mention it, I really thought of some new recipes, Lord. With his hands crossed, Juluo showed a kind smile. I have a good idea that can complete the Lord's tasks and make delicious food at the same time. But this requires Xiaobai's help. Just as Gao Qiang was about to ask what method to use, he saw Bai Hexia rushing out first. Wait until I come back to ask, Lord. Bai Hexia's voice came from afar. Speed, it has to be this fast. Bai Hexia took out something from his waist, pressed it lightly, and beams of light instantly passed through from both sides. This is exactly the lightsaber that Lian Wenqing used before. I don't know when Bai Hexia got it. Holding the lightsaber, Bai Hexia rushed directly to the insect mother. However, the insect mother just glanced at Bai Hexia and looked away. Little dwarf, not enough to eat? What did you say? The veins in Bai Hexia's hands bulged. This was the first time someone called him a dwarf in front of him. Thinking of this, Bai Hexia jumped directly into the insect mother's big mouth with the lightsaber. Is this human a fool? This thought flashed through the insect mother's mind subconsciously. But she didn't say that eating a fool would affect one's IQ, so she couldn't eat him. Stupid, human. Since Bai Hexia jumped into her mouth, let him stay and become her nutrition. The sharp teeth on the insect mother's big mouth bit down at Bai Hexia fiercely. At the critical moment, Bai Hexia spun the lightsaber in his hand, so fast that he danced the lightsaber like a spinning top and spun at high speed. The sharp teeth that were about to touch Bai Hexia were instantly flattened. Bai Hexia took this opportunity to jump directly into the insect mother's stomach along the throat. Before the outsiders could get nervous for him, Bai Hexia came out of another hole in the insect mother's body, and what he held in his hand was the miracle item that the insect mother had. No. Ignoring the hole that was flowing with gastric juice, the insect mother burst into a shrill wail. Give it back to me, give it back to me. After losing the goat egg, the insect mother's rapid reproduction stopped, and she didn't lay a new egg for a long time. Thinking of the insect mother's own terrifying fighting power, Gao Qiang instantly had some malicious speculations. I'm afraid that the insect mother paid the price of infertility for her terrible power. Only through props can the insect mother normally breed new larvae. Otherwise, she would be a heretic among the Zerg. Without even her own swarm, how can she have the face to call herself the Lord of the Zerg? It's just that Xiaobai's speed is too fast. So fast that she didn't react and snatched the miracle item. And that miracle item? Huh? Gao Qiang looked in the direction of Xiaobai, and saw Xiaobai holding the goat egg and walking in front of Juluo. Juluo was even more unceremoniously with a knife, cutting the goat egg into pieces, and then piercing it with a steel skewer he carried with him. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 430. What can be seen is that the minced meat is still twitching even when it is skewered on the steel skewer. Given its tenacious vitality, just chopping it into minced meat is far from enough to kill it. Even looking at the minced meat, one can still feel an inexplicable temptation to mate. After seeing this scene, Gao Qiang vaguely guessed Zhulogo's true thoughts. Zhulogo clasped his hands together and begged the others around him, "Then please help me buy some time." After saying that, she lit a fire on the spot and placed the meat skewers made of goat eggs on the fire to bake. At first, in the flames, the minced meat of the goat eggs had not changed much. Until Zhulogo sprinkled some inexplicable condiments. The flesh on the steel skewer let out an inexplicable howl of pain, and then shrank several times under everyone's gaze. Well, it seems like it's over-marinated. Holding the severely shrunken meat skewers in his hand, Zhulogo glanced aside and handed it to Shasha. "How about it tastes salty?" And Shasha, who hadn't had snacks for a long time, couldn't wait. "Whoa!" Opening her mouth wide, Shasha directly pulled off the entire piece of meat on the steel skewer. At this moment, the scene in front of Gao Qiang changed, and the whole world came to a standstill. A monster composed of irregularly distributed eyes and mouths gradually emerged behind Shasha, its shape extending across the entire world. After countless ferocious eyes glanced at Shasha, they finally landed on Gao Qiang. "Say your wish." Hearing these familiar words, Gao Qiang breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that things are going very smoothly. When the monster appeared in front of him, he thought it had attracted some unexpected mythical life. But now that I think about it, there probably isn't. This is just the process that should be followed after witnessing the destruction of a miracle. But, Sasha's mouth is really powerful. Gao Qiang couldn't help but twitch his lips when he thought about who the monster in front of him came to be. The fire failed to harm the goat eggs, and Zhulogo's pickling did not seem to completely destroy the activity of the goat eggs. Such a miracle of survival was destroyed by Shasha in one bite. "Say your wish." While Gao Qiang was thinking, the voice of impatience sounded again. Gao Qiang raised his head and looked at the monster behind Shasha. While he was looking at the monster was also looking at him. Moreover, his eyes were becoming more and more impatient. Gao Qiang narrowed his eyes, and he suddenly realized that the monster in front of him was not some cutscene in the background. The things evoked by this miracle upgrade have a strong sense of self. It's even possible that he exists. After realizing this, Gao Qiang did not dare to hesitate too much. Walking quickly in the still space, he walked to the supplementary regulations written by the Insight Project. Gao Qiang directly stretched out his hand to touch the supplementary regulations. "My wish is that while I am still alive, all races related to time cannot withdraw from the war without supplementing the regulations in my hand." After saying this, Gao Qiang saw countless shining golden words flying out of the paper, hovering next to the strange monster. Even though he had countless eyes, it took him more than 10 seconds to read the terrifying length of the supplementary regulations. Immediately afterwards, Gao Qiang saw the monster's ferocious mouth smiling at the same time. "You are declaring war on time. Actually, didn't you agree or reject your wish immediately?" While Gao Qiang was still thinking, the monster continued to make sounds. "Are you sure you want to make this wish? As you become more of a threat to time, time becomes more of a thorn in its side. Even if you are extremely powerful in the future, they will kill you in the past. Just because, they are time itself. I'm sure." Gao Qiang did not continue to listen to the monster's warning and made a decisive decision. Of course he knew that this would make time want to kill him even more, but only by doing so could he have the opportunity to go to the infinite battlefield and see what made time so afraid of him. Maybe when he reaches infinity, the threat to the Time Lords will be infinitely greater. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, the monster burst out laughing. I think I like you a little bit. If possible, I just want to mate with you right now. It's a pity that I have seen too many warriors like you fall down in the long river of time, thus losing the opportunity to become my partner. Don't let me down, and don't make me wait too long. Also, your wish came true. As the monster finished speaking, his entire body turned into a metal, flew towards Gao Qiang, and was embedded in Gao Qiang's personal interface. This also means that Gao Qiang has officially entered the 6th level of Miracle Path. As the monster disappears, the stagnant time gradually begins to move. Gao Qiang raised his eyes and saw that Jasha was carefully savoring the taste of Juluo's grilled meat skewers, her brows furrowed. Not delicious, Juluo asked subconsciously. No, it's not. Shasha shook her head, then looked at Juluo, one more string. Ha! Seeing the tic-tac-toe appearing on Juluo's forehead, Shasha smiled sheepishly and scratched the back of her head. Hee hee. Isn't it because I ate too fast that I can't taste it? Sister Chef, can you grill another skewer? Seeing that they were surrounded by countless insect swarms, everyone started to make trouble again. Gao Qiang smiled helplessly, and then shifted his attention to the new ability he had acquired in the 6th level Miracle Path. Miracle, 6th level. 1 second. Introduction, I only have 1 second, but I have blocked all your retreat routes. Effect, while the player is still alive, all time system lords in this battle will not be able to leave the battle. If the time system lord tries to leave the battle, a short 1 second replay will be performed. To say it is strong, it is not strong. But to say it is weak, it is not weak. Gao Qiang's eyes flashed with a gleam. As the Miracle Path entered the 6th level, he truly gained an ability related to time. Although the time is only 1 second, although the timeline cannot be manipulated at will, although the unit is fixed to the individual. Although, compared to the Time Lord, Gao Qiang can think of too many reasons to describe the shortcomings of this ability. But as the introduction said, this 1 second of time blocked all the opponent's retreat routes. After a little understanding of the effect of this ability, Gao Qiang understood. In this battle, it is impossible for Paradox to leave as casually as eternity. The Inside Plan has written down all the possibilities of its departure. Therefore, no matter what means Paradox tries to use to leave, it will eventually go back 1 second. This is an unsolvable prison for time. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 431. Then the only question now is, where is the paradox? Just when Gao Qiang realized the paradox, the situation on the field changed again. In front of Gao Qiang, the Marines and Zerg units on the scene turned into a handful of quicksand and dispersed. The planet, which was originally covered with Zerg flesh, was suddenly covered with yellow sand and looked almost dead. What is this? Seeing such a strange scene in front of them, the people around Gao Qiang finally stopped playing and came close to Gao Qiang. Someone attacked the Lord. Weiyan's voice came from the internal channel of the Overlord. Looking down from the Overlord's perspective, it was not that the entire planet had changed its terrain, but only the terrain and life around Gao Qiang had changed. As for why this problem did not occur before, Weiyan guessed that it was because of miracles. Although I don't know the restrictions of miracles on Time Lords. But it is certain that when there are miracle items, Time Lords can more or less not be so unscrupulous. At least, their actions will leave indelible traces. What do you think Paradox wants to do? Gao Qiang suddenly asked Weiyan. This time is different from before. When facing eternity, Eternity has always had a way to leave, so even if it enters the state of near death, it has not really fought to the death with Gao Qiang. But Paradox is different. He has no chance to leave, so every move he makes next must be with the idea of a last-ditch battle. I don't know what he wants to do specifically, Wei Yan pondered for a moment and answered truthfully. But what I know is that what he is going to do next should make you very uncomfortable. What does this discomfort mean? Gao Qiang wanted to continue asking, and saw new changes in the desert terrain in front of him. In the endless yellow sand, a real city like a mirage suddenly appeared, and it became more and more real in front of Gao Qiang. The dusty memories gradually awakened. Gao Qiang seemed to see the city where he lived before he traveled through time. The city is full of lights, wine, and women, and the traffic is busy. It is a pleasant and prosperous scene. Without war games and intrigues with foreign races, the humans there should live happily, right? No. Gao Qiang raised his head suddenly. If it is really that city, how could it appear here? After all, that city should not be known by Paradox. Is it a fantasy created by Paradox based on its own heart, or? A bad idea appeared in Gao Qiang's mind. What if, he said, what if? What if there is no crossing at all? Thinking of Dowu's situation, Gao Qiang's guess became more and more solid. Maybe he has never been an outsider, he has always been a member of this game. And the quiet and stable life in his memory is just a battle that has not yet officially started. As for how to become the lord of the war game, upgrade, it should be possible. Why did he cross? Gao Qiang thought about it carefully, but found that he had no memory of this at all. Stop the chaotic thoughts in his mind for the time being. Gao Qiang began to think about another thing. That is, what does Paradox want to do by making the city appear in front of him? Just as Gao Qiang was thinking about this, the bustling city in front of him suddenly stopped. The traffic lights no longer changed, and all the vehicles stopped in place. Even the pedestrians on the road were in a stagnation. The next second, Gao Qiang saw everyone walk out of the building or car, looking at him with all kinds of eyes. Some of them were calm, some were sad, and some were angry. No. Gao Qiang was very sure that those people could not see him, and those emotions were not directed at him. They were just walking towards him. They were even about to walk out of the mirage and step into the yellow sand. Lord. At this time, Wei Yan's low voice emerged from Gao Qiang's ears. I saw it all. You can't wait any longer either. Gao Qiang suddenly realized what Wei Yan wanted to do, and subconsciously shouted, Wait, Wei Yan. But the countless cannons of the Master in orbit have begun to charge. Ready to fire, 3, 2, 1. Boom boom. As before, countless beams of light fell from the sky, harvesting lives in the city like God's judgment. The building collapsed, revealing the clock gears slowly moving under the ruins. Paradox merged itself with the city. Wei Yan showed a hideous smile. Don't think you can hide this from me, old man. Keep attacking. The artillery fire of the Master in the sky was still hitting down, and Wei Yan almost saw the arrival of victory. But in Gao Qiang's eyes, it was another scene. The collapsed high-rise building hit the ground, and a mother broke her legs to protect her young daughter. Mom. The girl approached the woman with tears in her eyes, but was pushed away by the woman. Run. The orbital bombardment continued, and countless pieces of rubble flew all over the city. Instantly, there were explosions, screams, and wails. The people in that city seemed to be unable to see or feel anything in the outside world. They were like puppets on strings, and could only be slaughtered by outsiders. Wei Yan, stop, Gao Qiang said again. Unfortunately, the hedonist's talent seemed to have just been triggered. With an 80% execution rate, Wei Yan ignored Gao Qiang's orders. Paradox will only create puzzles that seem true and false to make you uncomfortable. Lord, you don't have to think so much. and, Lord, this is war. In the command room of the master, Wei Yin looked at the paradox that slowly revealed its true form under the bombardment, and opened his arms like an eagle. The crying and wailing in the city sounded more like a beautiful melody to him. The artillery fire fell on the ground, and the cries went over the rubble. War is about using any means necessary for victory, not to mention the innocent. Even sacrificing the lives of companions is worth it. As a lord, you must learn to use any means necessary. If you can't learn, then I will do it for you. After Wei Yin said this, the master released stronger firepower. That war maniac finally showed his chicken feet, Chasha whispered in Gao Qiang's ear. But this time, no one refuted the facts that Chasha said. Use any means necessary. Perhaps many people hate Wei Yin, and there is really a reason for it. But under Wei Yin's unscrupulous bombing, the wailing in the city is gradually getting smaller. In the end, the entire city was completely razed to the ground, and the observable true body of Paradox was revealed.